Jake Bogus and Nick Barr.
Go ahead, caller. You're on with Dingo and the Baby.
Back to the Drive.
This is The Drive.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Jake Bogus and Nick Barr.
Throwback Thursday, Josh Harvey. Big Red Report, FoxSports.com. Love to catch up with him and talk some spring football. Why not? Maybe we'll throw a basketball recruiting question in there for him as well. Josh, how are you this afternoon?
Doing pretty good.
Good. How's your child?
My child is good.
Good. Listen. Last time I saw Josh in person, he was at the grocery store shopping with his little man, and I was like, it's going to be so much fun.
That's right.
Yeah. Is it fun to go grocery shopping with your son, or
it's got to be terrible?
Is it terrible?
No, he's at a stage right now where it actually probably makes grocery shopping a little more fun.
Okay.
Because he's like looking at everything, but like I have a feeling like another month or so, I'm not going to be doing any grocery shopping. It's going to be the wife because he's starting to get to the point where it's just, he's a mess. He's all over the place.
I feel like when you have a kid, it's like it really makes you question: do I really need to go out? Because you got to like load them up, now when not having a kid, you can just like drop everything, run, go grab something, and come back, no big deal. But when you have a kid, man, it better be absolutely necessary for you to load them in the car and take them. It's an event.
It's an event when you go out with a kid. I mean, I'm trying to think about stuff I got to do on Saturday, planning now with him. So no, you're totally right.
Josh Harvey, Big Red Report, and FoxSports.com. Bo Pelini calls Taylor Martinez's accuracy phenomenal. It's March 28th, Josh. How much should we read into this?
Not much right now. Although I did talk with Kenny Bell a little bit yesterday, and he said, Kenny Bell's always one of those guys that he's always sticking up for Taylor and everything like that. But I basically asked about the chemistry between him and Taylor now that they're going on their third year, and he kind of gave me a pretty long answer and really complimented Taylor that he's gotten better from last year and mentioned that there's a jump in his game again. So I don't know. I think fans are probably excited to see him throw in the spring game. Probably not as much as they were last year. Probably not as much as they were against Southern Miss. But I think as long as Taylor Martinez is in a Nebraska jersey, he's always going to be a storyline of how much he's improving, his mechanics in the passing game. I
know he hasn't done much on the field, but are you surprised looking back on when he first got to Nebraska that Ron Kellogg has cemented himself as now going to be a 2 years, kind of the backup guy? Does that surprise you? Like, did you think he was talented enough to be there? I mean, because let's take a step back. I mean, when you're the backup quarterback at a place like Nebraska, that's not anything to just sneeze at.
Yeah, I don't know if he's the true backup going into the fall. But I think Ron Kellogg came in, and I think a lot of people kind of questioned his ability with a shift in the offense to, is he going to fit? But we've been hearing for a while now that, at times he might have the most active arm on the team, and then if this was a different offense, Ron Kellogg might even be in the mix more, and so. I know he's a workhorse when it comes to studying in the game room and the film room. He really pushes Taylor in those kind of areas, and really actually takes pride in it because he knows, Ron Kellogg, that he's a joker and whatnot. He knows that he's not option A, but he also takes a lot of pride in getting option A ready. And so, because of his hard work, I'm guessing the coaching staff really trusts him. And so, I guess it shouldn't be a surprise that, when you're talking about backups, that he's right there in the mix.
Other than Tommy Armstrong, and maybe that's not even your number one, but other than Tommy Armstrong, what are you most looking forward to watching during the spring game?
Yeah, that's actually not my number one. He's probably on there. I think you got to look at the defense first, just because that front seven is going to look so much different. So I really want to look at the defense. I want to look at the second group of offensive linemen. I think Jake Cotton is going to be okay at guard. I think Penzick, he's played center before, so I think he's going to be okay. But the last 2 years, they really talked about how they wanted to build depth at that offensive line. And I want to see, some of those guys in that second unit and see if they're going to have a better rotation, or I should say a bigger rotation this fall than maybe they had the last 2 years up front. And then after that, I just want to see more of Bondi kick, which I know is kind of funny, but I mean,
I'm with you.
That's been a position that Nebraska fans, they really haven't had to worry about the last, half a decade or whatever. And so I really want to see him kick. I really want to see him punt. I also want to see Sam Foltz punt. I don't know if both of them will do it or how they'll split that up, but it sounds like Sam Foltz, who's a walk-on wide receiver also from Grand Island, he's got a huge leg. I've seen him kick in practices. I've seen him kick in pregame warm-up. He's got a huge leg. It sounds like he's got the bigger leg, but Bondi maybe has a little more accuracy on the punting side of things. And I also know Bondi, he's come out and basically said, hey, I don't like punting as much as kicking, but I'll do whatever I have to do. And so I want to see that area of the game as well, which I know that doesn't register with a lot of fans, but I think it's an important position going forward with Nebraska when you don't have a guy like Henry or Morrow back there.
Well, what about special teams in general? I mean, if you ask me, that's an area this team has really struggled in. Not other than they got great kickers in Alex Henry and Maher, but I mean the kickoff and punt returning game has kind of been not great.
Yeah, the return game, obviously the fumble issues. I think the coverage team is going to be better in the fall. Maybe not necessarily as good. We might not see the finished product in the spring. I think the fact that they've recruited 8 linebackers in the last 2 years. I think they're going to really use some of those younger linebackers next year on a special team situation. I think they've wanted to use more linebackers and get more linebackers on the field during punt coverage and kick coverage. In the last couple of years, they just haven't been able to because of some of those guys were being relied upon on the field. But this year, they feel like the position's a little deeper, and so I think the coverage game is going to be better, but we might not see that until the fall. But I definitely want to see the return game too. I want to see who they put back there and kind of know who their top option is going into the fall. I don't think it's going to be Amir Abdullah, even if he was healthy, just because you're going to have to rely on him at running back. And so is it going to be a Jamal Turner? Is it going to be a Kenny Bell? And obviously we got to factor in a guy like Terrell Newby into the mix in the fall as well when he gets here. Can he make an impact on the special teams return game? I think that could be one area where you get him some touches.
If I had to make a list of pet peeves with Nebraska football, one of them would be, obviously I understand that they've had some issues at times, like in that Northwestern game of fumbling some punts just in terms of returning them. But it drives me nuts when Nebraska doesn't even make an attempt to catch certain punts. And then the ball, it'll be a bad punt, but then it'll take a bounce for the punt team's favor, and it rolls down the field, 10, 15 yards. Do you have any idea where that comes? Is it one of those things Bo says, Bo thinks, what, don't even try to catch it because you probably muff it?
Yeah.
Or where does that come from? That always just annoys me.
I think last year, and this is just my opinion, but I think last year there was some guys who maybe their confidence was shaken a little bit in the punt return game because there were some muff punts, and because of that, they didn't get as aggressive. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but going into the second or third game, last game of the season, I mean, they were only averaging like 2 yards punt return in Big Ten play because they just weren't basically returning anything. And I think it was an issue where, let's not turn the ball over because our offense is good enough. We can give up 10 to 15 yards if we just don't turn it over. So if we're going to return it, it's got to be this perfect situation where we know we can, we don't have to make a catch in traffic. We don't have to make a move on the first step to get away from a defender. And you'll wonder if this spring, if maybe some of those guys got their confidence back, if that was an issue, because it sure did seem like, that Northwestern game comes to mind. There was a couple others where nobody wanted to touch that thing when it was in the air. And you just have to wonder at that point if it was a confidence issue.
Josh Harvey, he's on Twitter at Josh Harvey Scout. He's our guest now. Big Red Report in FoxSports.com. They discussed this on the morning show today. What would make Taylor Martinez an all-time great quarterback at Nebraska? What does he have to do this season, Josh?
I think he's got to win a conference title, and I think he's got to win a legitimate bowl game. And whether that's a Capital Bowl win against a really good SEC team, whether that's a lower whether that's a lower BCS game. And it's going to be tough because now that the Big Ten has that Big Ten title game, you're probably going to have to go through Ohio State to win a conference title. And I think if Taylor Martinez was able to do that, he would really cement himself. You look at the numbers; they're gaudy. I mean, his numbers are a lot better than a lot of quarterbacks that fans consider to be the all-time greats at Nebraska. But he needs the hardware. I think that's the only thing that's separating himself. And if he doesn't get it, I think he's going to be a guy that people they're always going to remember Taylor Martinez for some of his struggles along the way. But I think for the most part, fans will think of him as a guy who put up some big numbers and had some success, but I think it's also going to be a thing where if he doesn't get that conference title or that hardware, as time goes on, he's going to be, forgotten about more and more and more. And I think if he could just get a big bowl win or just get a conference title, I think he might cement himself where 20 years down the line, he's not an afterthought. He's still thought of as one of the all-time greats.
Hey, Josh, I want you to think about Nebraska's favorable schedule early on. They'll be favored in most likely their first 8 games. Do you think that we will hear Taylor Martinez and in the Heisman talks well into October?
I think it's definitely a possibility because I think there's an opportunity to put up some big yards and some big-time performances against some, lower opponents. I think that UCLA game is crucial because if he has a good game, puts up some big yards, and they get a win, I think that really throws him into discussion. If they, squeak by and he has a, 2 or 3 interception game like he's had before against sometimes in bigger performances, then it might be an issue where people forget about him for a couple weeks, and they have to put together some wins for his name to get thrown back into the discussion. But it'll be interesting to see, too, how much Nebraska kind of starts to promote him in June, July, August, or if there's a promotion push whatsoever by the school. But I think he makes enough big electricity-type plays that, if they're doing pretty good team-wise, that his name could definitely be up there.
Hey, Josh, is it wishful thinking, because I heard someone say this, is it wishful thinking that some of the turnovers last year for the offense stemmed from the fact that they knew the defense was shaky and they had to be aggressive to try and push the ball down the field, because if they gave the ball back, that it was probably a wrap for the defense?
I want to know who told you that, Nick.
I will not name names.
Okay. I don't know, maybe. I've never heard of that, really. I've never thought of it that way. The offense literally going out and thinking we got to do something here to their defense isn't probably going to stop anybody. I don't know. I would think, if anything, that would creep in their head more this year just because of how young that defense is going to be. Maybe you're on to something, but I can't imagine the offense doing that just because it sounds like they have confidence in the defense, at least last year. You talk to some offensive guys this year, they know that they're young on that side of the football. But I would have a hard time, really believing that if, I started to sit down and really mull it over for a while.
Hey, Josh, this might be, I want to switch up to recruiting real quick. This might be a fairly loaded question, but I know you'll have a good answer for it. Nebraska obviously only has one commit. It's very early for the class of 2014. But how does Nebraska go about choosing which kids they're going to offer? How many 5-stars? How many 4-stars? Which areas of the country? Is there a big board? Do they have a big meeting? I mean, can you give us some sort of specifics or how things work over there for which kids they're going to offer?
Well, right now I know that there's been a push this year, which there has been in the past, but it seems like an extra push to really focus on that 500-mile radius. Just because the 500-mile radius this year is loaded with talent. This is probably the best year for that 500-mile radius in maybe 5 or 6 years. And some analysts that I've talked to have said maybe even longer. So I know there's a big push by them for that, but I think really then it just comes down to the specific assistant coaches recruiting their region and identifying guys that they feel like are worthy of an offer. And Nebraska's offer system is a little different than everybody else's. And that's why they sometimes get in on guys a little later than others, which I think upsets fans. But what they do is, okay, you have an assistant coach, he's recruiting a specific region. Let's take a Terry Joseph who recruits Louisiana. He goes down to Louisiana, finds the talent, brings it back, and whether it's his position or not, it might be a defensive lineman, goes to Coach K. Coach K watches him. He likes him. Then John Papuchis has got to sign off as a defensive coordinator. Once JP signs off, then it goes up to Bo, and Bo has the final yes or no. If he says yes, then the kid gets an offer. So a kid might have to go through a 4-step process to get an offer from Nebraska. And the thing is they're starting to get their message out there enough to where recruits now know that Nebraska doesn't necessarily just blanket a whole state with offers like other schools that come to mind. They're a little more selective than that, and that's why you'll see a kid who maybe has a dozen offers get an offer from Nebraska and be a little more excited about it when they're going up against 10 other quality BCS schools.